what do you do if you're a scientist or a lover of science or a lover of philosophy? Think that science and philosophy go some of the way to accessing truth and knowledge, but not all of the way.
If you believe that the world is only material, then you're missing a huge part of human experience.
What it is me that I'm aware of, that you're not aware of my consciousness. I'm aware of it. It's something which is essential to me. But what is it? Where does it come from?
I need a theory which is going to explain every type of mental experience.
Since the 17th century, the culture of science has been dominated by the metaphor of the machine. And if you apply the metaphor of the machine to the human being, you get a mechanistic outlook and you get a mechanistic understanding of the human being and of the brain.
The problem with the materialist worldview is that it leaves out consciousness and purpose from the universe.
In 1973, George Blaker and Patrick Shackleton started the Scientific and Medical Network. They started it because they felt that the materialistic views of science were too limited. These limited views were affecting our society.
When I came to the SMN, it was at a time when I was thinking a lot about who I was and what life was all about. And the answers to the questions that I had in my mind seemed to come from different corners. Some of them came from science, some of them came from philosophy.
I've looked to Jung, I've looked to the East, to Buddhism, to Taoism, to art, music.
These were obviously powerful ways to find out knowledge.
But one home that I found in about 10 years ago was the Scientific and Medical Network.
I think this group of people working together is the best thing in Britain for trying to find a way forward.
What is important about the Scientific and Medical Network is that actually it is interested in the whole range of phenomena. It is interested in the physical world, it is interested in the mental world, the paranormal world, the psychic world, but it's also interested in the spiritual and the mystical world.
We try to find some kind of middle way between, on the one side, the demands of and the methods of science. We try to apply scientific rigour wherever it is necessary and useful. But at the same time, we recognise the importance of the spirit, of the unspoken, of that which goes beyond analysis and logic.
The Scientific and Medical Network is interested in the link between the whole range from physical, mental and spiritual.
We want to ask fundamental questions. What is the nature of reality? What is the nature of the brain? Not just in terms of its physical properties, but also in terms of its function. For example, there's perfectly good evidence to support telepathy. How does that work?
I cannot say all of this in a short answer, and I invite you to look at these blogs.
The dialogues that we have here are very rich, very interesting. It's great that I can share that with my son, actually.
Yeah, because I mean, at the moment I don't actually have the depth of knowledge that I would enjoy having at the moment. And so when I come to these kind of conferences, it allows me to kind of explore these ideas.
I'm a leadership consultant. I work globally with organisations and I have a particular interest in consciousness and leadership and the step change or a paradigm shift in the way that we might be looking at leadership moving forward and leadership being, the leader role being a place which is about supporting people to become more conscious of their global responsibilities. And this is one of the places that I can come to engage in conversations that have a global transformative perspective.
There are other big questions as well. For example, does humankind have a spiritual nature? If so, What is a spiritual nature? How does it work? What is the relationship between two people on a spiritual plane? These are all good scientific questions that need to be examined.
I find that I meet so many people from a really diverse range of backgrounds and careers and professions. They tend to integrate and seek to integrate all of these different backgrounds. And so they're some of the most interesting people I've ever met, and also the most warm and friendly. So it's really got a huge amount for me, conferences and seminars, but also recommended books and the review. It's really holistic.
I now have spoken for several local groups for the SMN, and I've attended a lot of local group and national meetings. And there's always a wonderful exchange of ideas and different perspectives there. And because people are there who are quite rigorously trained, but also have that sort of spiritual dimension to them as well, you get some very stimulating conversation, and you get pushed a bit further than if you were just to speak to people who have a spiritual perspective.
We are talking about what makes us ourselves, what makes you, you. We are each of us a bewildering me in a bewildering world. And how do we find our bearings in that? And if somebody, like on an airport, when you see the map of the airport and you try to get your bearings, where am I going? You're always looking for the spot that says, you are here. And once you see that, you have that sigh of relief, but you are here, but who are you? It's not enough to know where you are, you have to know who you are.
These conferences, I think, are really important because they allow us to build the bridges that I think are so important, especially in our education. Going back to the root of the word educare, to bring up, and looking at the word religio, which means to reconnect and to rebind. I think that's part of our pursuit as we look for deeper wisdom and insight and compassion. So I think these conversations are very important for scientists and mystics to participate in, and artists and everyone.
I'm a psychologist, but from a depth psychology perspective, I feel that I'm placed in the middle between the scientist and the mystic, and hoping to span these worlds and actually in some sense give form and body to that in-between place. There's a joyful feeling of people who are not so much involved in pulling things apart, but in bringing things together, not into some undifferentiated, homogenized, we're talking about order out of chaos today, not to recreate some sort of primeval chaos, but in fact to produce some new creative vision. We're talking about the new world view.
One of the ethics of the network is that there's arising this sort of opposition to a deterministic, materialistic interpretation of the universe.
I'm a business consultant, and I'm here because I'm interested in spirituality. The topic interested me, order out of chaos and transformation. I translate that into change management at work, working with groups and helping colleagues and clients in any transformation they want to bring about in their lives or at work.
I rather like the SMN because it gives you a chance to find out what everybody's thinking about what's it all about. And I suppose that a lot of it has to be about living genuinely, in other words, being true. And I suppose the great tragedy of all disciplines is that there's the risk of being true to an image rather than being true to what is. And one wonderful thing about meeting people across disciplines is that the very difference between you allows to recognise the nothingness that joins you all, and the friendship that makes everything accessible, because I don't think anything is possible without the self-immolation that comes from love.
And I've been coming to these for some 10 years. I come for refreshment, really. I come for new ideas and meeting people who are thinking about personal issues and the context we all live in. And access to people I would normally not meet. because I'm not in the academic world, I'm in the business world.
Unfortunately, society's become a little fragmented, and so we have to ask the question, how do we build the bridges, when in fact we don't need bridges. If we weren't living in the fragments and the illusions, we wouldn't need the bridges at all. In fact, it's an opportunity. I think somebody once told me that the Chinese symbol for crisis is the same symbol that they use for opportunity. And this is an opportunity to bring all those fragmented worldviews together.
I've just been speaking to some of the people, on the ground who are just networking in the breaks and things like that. And what's really coming out is that the Science and Medical Network, I think, really provide in this country a very rare role, which is completely needed.
The thing about the network is that people come here because they want to expand their own ideas and their own understanding safely.
One should be stretching science, pushing the frontiers of science as far as possible. And that's one of the things the Scientific and Medical Network has always been interested in. It is interested in things on the frontiers of science.
Science is transcending and growing out of this worldview. For the sake of science alone, we need to move on. And this is a worldview which leads to alienation, people feeling alienated from their bodies, from each other. It leads to alienation of humanity from the planet. It's the worldview that really underlies the environmental destruction that we're in. And I think the only way forward is a more holistic view, which would be literally healing of the divisions within ourselves and between us and nature.
The presuppositions and assumptions behind our current scientific materialism should be questioned, and that a new basis could be laid for a relationship between science and spirituality which would be complementary and constructive and creative rather than confrontational.
My hope is that science can be expanded into the domain of mental and mystical experience.
Modern science validates the idea of the transcendent. Cosmology now tells us that we can't see 4/5 of the universe. 4/5 of the universe is beyond our ability to access. We can just about infer its existence based on its effect on what we can see. There's a huge amount of reality that our empirical senses can't access.
What's important about the Scientific and Medical Network is that it discusses these issues. I mean, it doesn't matter. The fact that some people will have different views about it as to whether, it's beyond science or within science or eventually within science. The point is the Scientific and Medical Network provides a forum in which these sorts of debates can take place.
But it's not a New Age movement. What it is a scientific movement that looks at these new ideas in a rigorous way. We're open, we're supportive, we're helpful, and we're creative.
It's the questions and the process of discussion which is important, not the final answers. We may never know the final answers to some of these questions. What is important is the way in which you actually attempt to get to the truth.
The need, the imperative even, to create a compassionate global society, a compassionate global spirituality, a global ethic, in which people really understand and respect each other.
Ultimately, we are not just changing ourselves, we're wanting, in some sense, we have to change the world.